This is a Zenolink data view analysis for Rod Brindamour. This is for a hockey slap shot. Data was collected on August 26, 2009. We'll begin in the performance profile. And in the performance profile, we're going to look predominantly at how effectively Rod utilizes the speed that he produces. So we call this the performance factor. The performance factor is essentially a measure of how efficient the athlete is utilizing peak speed or peak power potential at the point of collision or impact, depending on the sport. In this case, we're looking at two main areas, two principal parameters: the percent of maximum stick speed at impact, and that would be essentially your miles per hour, the speed at which the actual end of the hockey stick is moving. So we're looking at the percent of the maximum speed that's utilized at impact. And then we're looking at the percent of maximum, what we'll call stick release speed at impact. This is the angular component. So there's actually two components to power. There's the linear speed, and then there's the angular speed, the rotational speed that the stick has as well. They both combine to give us peak momentum. And the shot speed and the power of the shot is directly related to the ability to transfer momentum or speed from the stick to the puck. So what we're looking at here is how effective or how efficient Rod is in utilizing what he creates. And we're not looking at how he creates it or how much he creates, but just of what he creates, how much is he actually using. And he's using an incredible amount of what he produces. Typically, he's using 99% of his linear speed, which is fairly common to see high output at linear speed. But he's also using 93% of his angular speed stick, or angular speed stick speed, which is incredible. You can see against sort of a normal population of elite level players. Typically, somewhere around 70% is average. So he's definitely well above that. That tells us that of the power he produces, he uses a huge amount of that at impact. So from an outcome efficiency standpoint, incredibly efficient. You'll see that stick speed itself is about where we would expect. It's about normal, a little above our average. The release speed is a little lower than average. So even though he's using a large portion of what he creates from an efficiency standpoint, he isn't creating as much angular component as the average population would be, average elite level player. So he's right up there, right in the averages, a little bit higher on the linear, a little bit lower on the angular, so right about average is what we would expect to see as far as shot power or momentum. So the first area that we'll investigate in terms of how the speed's created is the kinetic link. The kinetic link is essentially a measure of the power generation process from the ground up. So what we're looking at is the rotational speed of the lower body, the rotational speed of the upper body. Then we're looking at the rotational speed of the arms as they rotate around the spine. And then ultimately we're looking at the rotational speed of the stick itself as it rotates away from the body, rotates around the body into the impact zone. We see here that in the kinetic link we have some reasonable connection between the upper torso and the arms. However, that definitely could be better. And so what's happening is we're getting a transfer of speed through the torso out to the arms, but we're not getting a really effective transfer speed, which means then the upper body works harder than it should to help compensate and contribute. We have really good arm acceleration, fantastic arm deceleration, and great stick release. So you'll see that there's actually a bend in the stick, especially as it hits the ice, and then it snaps forward. So you can see the bend in there and then the snap. That is timed beautifully, and although we're not creating as much as some, we're definitely using the vast majority of it right at the point of impact. So really great in terms of timing, upper body stick timing with the puck. Now, the fact that or that Rod is skating in, you're not going to see a whole lot of lower body contribution. But in this case, you see very little lower body contribution at all, which is, again, fairly normal. But it's something that actually can be improved upon, and it allows the individual to not only create more power, but to do it more quickly with more explosiveness, hence getting shots off from weird positions, on the move, in crowds, that explosiveness, not only with respect to the speed at which the puck is flying off the stick, but the quickness with which the shot can be produced. So we would want to see more lower body involvement, although you're not going to see the type of lower body involvement you see, say, in a ground sport like baseball or tennis, but you definitely can get more lower body involvement. So overall, we have very good arm to stick kind of relationship, decent relationship between the torso and the arms, but we can work on that, and we definitely need to try to get a little bit more lower body involvement so that we get, because lower body will make the shot not only more powerful but but quicker, allow for more explosiveness in terms of getting the shot off. In terms of speed output, we see that the max speed happened late, so that this kind of negates that. Shoulders are a little bit low, but arms are right on the money, and we talked about the linear release speed or angular release speed being a little low as well. The next area we'll look at is stability, and stability gets broken into two areas. The first is lower body mechanics, and that's kind of what we were talking about. What you're going to see here is this relationship of the center of mass as it glides through the zone and the rotation of the pelvis. So what we want is right in this area a little bit more of this. So you can see as the shot gets produced, if we back up the video here a little bit, as rod comes into this action, right in here we would want a hair bit more of rotational speed output by the lower body to help contribute to the quickness and the power. You see right in here, though, as the shot gets closer to impact, we see that there is some pretty good lower body, like force contribution and rotation to the pelvis. That's where you see this. We want this just a little bit over here so you get it a little bit sooner. The other thing is that rod does not decelerate at all at the impact zone, which is why his angular speed's a little bit lower than average. We would want to see, and again, you got to remember, this is happening in less than half a second here. So these are very subtle kinds of things, but we would want better, what we call stiffening as the stick comes through the impact zone, and we would see that in this blue line tapering off just a little bit so that the speed isn't so much like just literally coming through at the point of collision with the puck. We want to have a very quick but very abrupt deceleration of the forward momentum to help release that stick through the puck. And that's something we can work on off the ice as well as from a technique perspective, looking at lower body strength, stability, the ability to create torque at the feet. So there's a lot of great training things we can do to enhance that. The other area we'll look at is spine stability. We're looking at flexion extension and left and right lateral bending. Spine stability is right on the money, good flexion extension, and pretty much neutral. So we've got really good core stability, so that's a big plus. So in Rod's case, what we're really looking at is a better lower body stabilization and mechanics, create better speed output, and use the legs more to initiate, drive the process, and then slightly better coordination between the lower body and the upper body and the arms and the stick being the best of the whole process. But all in all, obviously really good overall mechanics. Muscular loading is essentially the measurement of the stretch shorten cycle. So we look at how effective the hockey player is in creating a quick stretch on the muscles, which then is producing potential energy and utilized to enhance work output and speed output by the musculature, the force of contraction. And here we see that load is reasonable in terms of the dynamic, the amount of it, but it's mistimed. We would want to see the loading occurring, where we want a little bit of lower body contribution. We want some loading occurring in there. It just helps in the power contribution. So again, there's a lot of things that can be done there off the ice to train more effective stretch shorten through the core, take the basic core strength and make it explosive in diagonal patterns. That could be done very simply, and then that could translate very, very easily onto the ice type of stuff. The same thing with upper body. We would expect that there be a little bit more load. Now, there's a little secondary load in here where we had expected it, but the primary load is occurring early. So there is this tendency to get a little load, but it's fairly limited. So, and you can see here, the amounts of loading are pretty good. So the idea, though, is that there's not really good dynamic stretch shorten occurring at the torso or the upper body, and we can enhance that by, number one, creating better lower body stabilization, better lower body input, and then number two, by working on stretch shorten, diagonal stretch shorten patterns in explosive movements off the ice, and then bringing those into the onto the ice training and technique for that matter. Last area we'll look at is just the hockey stick dynamics, and basically what we're looking at is that the vast majority of the speed. So here's the puck sitting on the ice, stick, comes into impact with it, and the vast majority of all the speed is right where the intended direction is. There's a little bit of inside out, coming this direction, and a little bit of upward snap as the stick transfers to the puck, and that's totally normal. Looks great. Speeds are good, and overall trajectory is good. So in summary, overall we've got fantastic mechanics, but within that context, where we're limited or lacking is in the angular component, in the angular stick snap that really provides a lot of explosiveness and speed off the stick, the puck acceleration. And the two areas that we see breakdowns with respect to mechanics are lower body contribution and the relationship between the torso and the arms. And in both cases, we don't get really good stretch shortened through those areas as well. So from a training perspective, we're going to want to work on lower body stabilization, lower body explosiveness, and diagonal patterns in particular, and then the related stretch shortened patterns, again, in diagonal patterns, first off the ice, from first base training and then explosive training, and then on the ice as well, including technique stuff, but even just on the ice training kind of stuff. So, the big premise, or the big focus being our lower body contribution, and then the relationship of the torso and the arms.